it's now a fully digital process. So that PDF that's created never has to change from a PDF to paper back to a PDF. It can remain digital all the way.
Hey everyone, I am super excited today to be talking with Terry Robinson, president of Notary Hub, which is a longtime Seattle business. And I think so many consumers do not realize how notaries affect their lives. So we're going to get into it, and Terry's going to tell you all about his business and how in the future you're really going to see this as part of your life and some of your transactions that you'll have in the future. Terry, welcome. So excited to have you on my show and talk with you. I've known you forever. I've watched your business grow and take off, and I've been just super excited about this, the Notary Hub that you were telling me about. I remember like a long time ago, actually, you've been working on this for a while. And so I would love for you to talk about your background, how you got into your business, and what you love most about it.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. I'm actually honored to be here because you are such a rock star in what you do. And I've seen many of your other podcasts, and just bringing in these people to your ecosystem and creating this knowledge, additional knowledge. So thank you for having me today. I'm honored. So how did I get into opening Notary Hub? I've been a notary for over 30 years, but I've owned a side company that's been around since 1953. I haven't been around that long. I've been an owner for over 30 years. My kids remind me that I'm old though. So, that's a thing. But, so LMI Notary helps people become and renew their notaries across the country. So we help with the bond and the licensing, the errors and omissions insurance, the physical stamp, and all the other supplies that are necessary for a traditional notary to practice. And 5 years ago, when states started allowing for remote online notarization to happen because of that thing that happened, COVID, it was necessary. And some of these states had this in motion, but this really accelerated remote online notary. So I was in a position of, it looks like I'm becoming a tech guy and starting a new company. It just made it natural because all of my customers were calling saying, how do we do this remote online notary thing? And so 5 years later, here we are. I wasn't a tech guy, and now I am. And it's been an incredible journey to allow for traditional notaries to have this new technology to empower them in the year 2025 and moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it always seems like with some of the greatest businesses and inventions, it was a problem that came up that spurred the whole, oh my gosh, how do we figure out a solution for this? Because a lot of people, I don't think, realize, they buy houses throughout their life, and they go through and they do an estate plan, and they kind of don't realize until they go through a transaction like that, oh my gosh, there's this thing called a notary, and you have to have your signature notarized by a notary before that document is going to be considered legal. And so it's always been in person. And it's interesting. I'm so excited that the lending world is we're finally going that direction. But, sometimes people are traveling, or, they're out of the country, and it's really hard to find an in-person U.S. notary outside the United States. You have to go to the U.S. Embassy. The appointments can be 2 months. So I was so excited. I remember when you talked to me that you were starting this company. And because during COVID, we were at the lowest rates we'd been at in 50 years. We had 4 times the volume, and literally the escrow companies were like, we're under all of these requirements by the states. We can't do in-person signings. We're trying to figure out how to do this. You have to have shields. And so for the ones that were set up and the lenders that allowed it, were able to, no problem, do these transactions. But yes, it's fascinating how I've seen progressively over the last 5 years, like more and more, we're starting to see the application of it. What do you think, like, what industries have you seen kind of the biggest jump or like the best application
Yeah,
of the remote?
great question. So, notaries, most people don't recognize that notaries interact in multiple industries. So it's a great question. So real estate, is definitely a focus of this conversation, and that's a major one. But banking industry,
Yeah.
medical, schools, it goes on and on. I mean, it's
Mhm.
oftentimes people don't recognize when a notary is necessary, and
Yeah.
a lot of times notaries themselves feel like they're in the way because people just want to get to the end of the transaction, but the notarization piece has to come into play.
Yeah.
So we've focused a lot on making sure that that's a smooth ending to a transaction.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. What would you say is probably have been some of the most challenging pieces of the whole being able to verify a person's identity and kind of being able to put those types of measures in place to be able to make sure the authenticity of the verification and the notarized document?
Right. So I'll start by saying at Notary Hub, we've got all that covered. And now I'll go into how and why.
Yeah.
So if people are wondering, how can this be legal? All those questions that I had actually before I went out on and embarked on this, I said, there's no way you can take a traditional notarization and just put it online. There's going to be fraud. How is this even going to be a thing? So there's many parts to this. So we'll start that states have laws around remote online notarization, and there's many things that have to take place. And so Notary Hub is vetted by all the states that we're licensed in to earn a gold star. Basically, we're on their compliance list. So if you look at our platform, you look at their state website, Notary Hub is listed. So one of the things that I love is that there's an audio visual component versus, and I'm going to do a comparison, traditional versus in person. In person, we would just be doing this and it would be he said, she said, right?
Yeah.
In an audio visual component, there's a record, an audit trail of exactly what we said and what happened during the notarization. In an in-person notarization, the notary is expected to know whether or not the signer's ID is authentic. How is that possible that I know that McLovin, I'll use that reference, isn't handing me a fake ID, right? So
just by looking at it.
Just by looking at it. So Notary Hub actually vets that ID for the notary. So the notary knows when that signer comes in that ID has been vetted with the government agency, and that's a real ID. There's also a knowledge-based assessment that's required, that the signers are asked 5 basic questions about their past, publicly reported data, and they pass those 2 requirements to legally join a remote online notary session. And I'll go one step beyond. We also offer biometrics, where some signers may not have enough data to populate the 5 knowledge-based assessment questions. So we actually have inside Notary Hub app, they'll hold up their phone and take a liveness check, and we'll be able to recognize whether or not that's really that person and not just a snapshot, a selfie version of them. So those are some of the components. There's more. I could go on and on about this, but those are some of the things that ensure the security that signer really is that person.
It almost sounds more secure than really the in-person. Have you seen a pretty quick adoption of like what industries have already fully adopted this and which ones are kind of in the process of still getting there?
I wish I could say blanket answer that real estate has fully adopted or the legal field is fully adopted. I can't say that sweepingly. What we're seeing is in each one of those, it's growing, as far as the ability to adopt. But 100%, no. But we're seeing the dominoes fall month over month, year over year, and state by state even adoption is interesting as we move across the country.
Yeah. I mean, I got to imagine over the next 5 years, we're going to see an exponential
Right.
growth in that. And we've already seen like in the mortgage industry, the lending industry, for sellers, it's pretty much fine. Most lenders are absolutely fine with the seller using Ron to sign. In fact, I've had a couple scenarios where that's come up where the seller was like in Spain or they were
Hmm.
traveling outside the country. They weren't local. And that was going to be the best way to sign him. And then a few times I actually had a client who is an expatriate, lives in India,
Mm.
lives and works in India for Google. And we were doing a loan for him on his property in Kirkland.
Yeah.
And he would have had to travel 5 hours
Yeah.
to the quickest embassy,
Right.
and he couldn't get an appointment for a month and a half.
Yeah.
So I was able to find a loan program for him because not all the loan programs, not all investors, the money behind these loan programs will allow it yet, but a lot of them do. So I was able to find him a loan program that did allow it. So we were able to sign him via Ron. So we're starting to see that.
Mhm.
I was really excited, and he was just elated with the fact that
Yeah.
he's like, you just saved me like literally 3 or 4 days.
Well, I'll just say, of course
Yeah.
you did, because that's what you do. You're creative and you're finding these solutions. And we're just thrilled to be a solution for these types of use cases.
Yeah.
And it's called remote online notary. And so you were thinking about the remote part, which is great. But the other real advantage is the digital side.
Mm-hmm.
No longer is this printing 100 pages of docs, signing them, scanning them, uploading them back into the workflow. It's now a fully digital process. So that PDF that's created never has to change from a PDF to paper back to a PDF. It can remain digital all the way. So it can be uploaded into Notary Hub. And another security component of Ron that doesn't happen in the traditional sense is this PDF is locked and encrypted at the end of a session in Notary Hub
Oh,
with a digital signing certificate
okay.
by the notary. So if you open the audit trail of the PDF, it will show that that notary was the notary that encrypted and locked that document.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different than a traditional? You and I could notarize a piece of paper. That paper leaves here, and any bad actor can make any changes to that piece of paper after the notarization.
Which is scary.
In this case, someone could try, but there's going to be an audit trail that will show someone did something after the notarization. So another major factor why I bought into,
Yeah.
yes, this is actually a real thing, and why I founded Notary Hub.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I got to imagine that there's going to be quick adoption of it. And just myself, I got a firsthand look on how it could save me
Right.
when we were planning a family trip to Mexico, but
Yeah.
I had to travel a few days before my husband and son. And I didn't even think about this, but a friend of mine said, well, you better check with the airlines and the rules, because if you're not traveling as a family, there are rules about one parent taking a minor child
Mhm.
to a foreign country. And I hadn't even thought about that. And so literally, I remember texting you at like 7 p.m. at night, going, Terry, what do I do? I fly out tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And you said, well, you know what? This is exactly one of the great applications of Notary Hub. So you're going to get to experience this.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I mean, it was really easy. I was able to log on, made my own account,
Yeah.
and went in and requested, a time. And you have a lot of different notaries in your system that can then pick up and choose the time. I was amazed. There was a lot of times like going way into the
Right.
late evening hours.
Right.
And because I think I jumped on with your notary at like 8:30, 8:45 at night. And I mean, we were able to get through it, and I had a notarized document by the time it was 9 p.m.
I love that.
So it was great.
Love that use case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, for people that might be in a similar situation like that, this is when the consumer application
Right.
of it. So, one of the things I noticed when I was going through the process was you've got the business application, You also have the direct to consumer application. What has been, since you've launched, kind of what's the percentage of like who uses it mostly?
Here's the incredible thing that I love about our platform is because I'm coming from the space of helping notaries for so many years, our platform has really taken on that ethos of we've taken so much care in creating a platform that's friendly for notaries, from the point of onboarding to the training of how to use our platform. And we've done that so the experience for the notaries is obviously incredible, but that translates into the experience that the notary is able to provide a service for their signers. So I don't know if you realize there are 4.5 million notaries in our country. And
4.5 million.
and about 1 billion documents a year that are notarized.
Wow.
So we are effectively working with notaries across the country that are onboarding onto our platform, hence the availability solution. They're all over the country. And we have notaries that are doing their own thing. They have their own companies and they're solving signing situations that way. We also offer notaries for clients like title and escrow companies use cases to have available for those. We also offer onboarding for those types of companies, law firms, financial institutions, to bring their own notaries in their in their organizations onto Notary Hub to use the tools. So we're really offering every solution out there.
Yeah. How do you see over the next like 5-10 years, how do you see this evolving and really shaping some of the industries that use notaries so much?
I think of it as sort of the comparison of the landline with the cord to the cell phone, or the going even from a wet signature to a digital signature where that's been adopted. Remote online notary is moving in the exact same metaphoric, direction. We're moving in that direction. So I think, I would question folks of why they wouldn't want to do this. Why do you want to get in your car and physically take the time to go meet with someone in person and print all those documents? Scan them back in after they've been notarized. It's slow.
Well, it is. And the thing about it is when people have big files of documents, they lose them or they get stolen, heaven forbid.
Right.
So I would think that the fact that it's kept, like you have a copy of it, notary's got a copy. It's kept as there's a digital footprint of it. So I got to think that, especially like with legal documents, like real estate documents, estate type documents, it will be easier for people to retain copies of that and not have it lost.
And not just the digital copies of the PDF, but a recording of the session.
Yes.
So that's a huge component of the security of what makes this a secure transaction, but also years later, you can access that.
Yeah. And, or, if some of these types of transactions end up in a court, then that would be something that potentially is admissible because there's that entire session.
That's right.
That's recorded and it's not a he said, she said.
That's right.
That's amazing. What I'd love to have you talk about a little bit is like what you've done in how you've created the experience for the consumer. Because I just have a feeling more and more consumers are going to realize and they're going to come directly to your site and use your platform. So like, what other things have you done? Do you feel like in the customer experience to make it really user-friendly, and kind of just explain like what a typical user experience is?
Yeah, we have a couple different ways. Signers, I know you're calling them users, but we'll say signers. So someone who needs something notarized, they can either schedule a session by just going straight to Notary Hub, not create an account, and easily just schedule and upload their document. They also have an option to create an account that would allow them access easier access to those documents in the future and also creating future sessions. So we've made it a choice. You know, if you just want to come in quickly, get it done and move along, we have that option. Or I'm going to need this potentially in the future. You can just go in and create an account. They can choose to do that later. As far as, you know, ease, we're a web-based, you know, application. So it's not software that a signer would need to download onto a specific device, as long as they have reliable internet access with audio-visual technology. So we're talking phones, because that's what most people are on, a pad, a laptop, or even a desktop computer, as long as they have that audio-visual component. And then going into a session, they're capturing a picture of their ID. They're taking that selfie. They're doing those 5 knowledge-based assessment questions. And then the document is interactive on their device. They can see their notary, and they're having a conversation just like we are, while they're using the tools on Notary Hub, so that they can either use their finger to sign, they can adopt a signature, and then they're just pushing a button, you know, to drop and drag their signature into the spots that are required. At the end of the session, the document is downloadable as a PDF, and off they go.
Yeah. And they can do it. I think they can do it anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah. So good question. So legally, the RON, the remote online notary, has to be physically in the state that they're licensed in.
Gotcha.
For instance, a Washington notary could be on vacation in Hawaii. They cannot perform remote online notary when they're there. But as long as they're on vacation within the state, that's kind of a cool use case for notaries. They can travel within their state that they're licensed. For the signers can be anywhere in the world, as long as they have a government issued picture ID. And that's incredible for notaries, because all of a sudden that opens up their potential pool of signers. So notaries in each state now can work with signers across the world. So it's opened it up for notaries.
Well, and it's a huge service. Like if you're somebody who's traveling internationally and, you know, you've got to sign this document, ordinarily you'd have to wait till you get back to the US. Or you'd have to get to a US embassy and try to get an appointment. So the fact you can sign, you know, anywhere like in the world is pretty remarkable. Yeah. No, that's amazing. What would you say, like, that is there any kind of like challenges that you've come up against that, you know, in finding the network of notaries, or have they quickly kind of just jumped on? And
I'll tell you, the biggest challenge for me is I want to go from step A to step Z and have everything at once. And that's been one of the challenges for me learning about technology is we've had to make choices along the way that make sense for our platform and for what our remote online notaries are asking for and what our signers are asking for. So we've really grown as a platform by listening. What do our notaries need? What do our signers need? We listen, we develop, we test, and we deploy to our live site. And that's how we've continued to grow. You know, I think that would be the primary way of how we've grown. Challenge-wise, I think it's really how can we build as quickly as possible, but in a really effective way that makes sense for our platform. And so I think the biggest thing is just listening to the needs of our notaries and our signers and our client base.
Yeah. Well, and I could see too, like, you know, especially in an economy where, you know, people are looking for ways of making extra money. You know, being a notary is a great type of a, you know, career or gig job. If somebody doesn't want to do it full time, they could look at doing that as part time.
That's right.
Get through the proper licensing and bonding that they need to do, and then they're able to offer these great services. Like I was amazed at how quick it could be done. And just because I've been in this industry for 25 years, and, you know, it's a thing when you have to set up a signing appointment and, the fact that you could just literally go on the laptop, create an appointment, jump on and see this notary, essentially upload your ID and do the verification checks and be in and out within like 30 minutes is pretty amazing. It is fascinating, amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm selfishly hoping that the mortgage industry continues to evolve. Have you seen where have you seen, I would say, that kind of the expansion, or we haven't seen it yet in government loans? Like none of the FHA, none of the USDA, they won't allow it yet. But where have you seen the expansion, like with the title companies or the escrow company notaries that you work with?
Yeah. So honestly, I'm going to answer this in an awkward way. We don't get to see the documents that are uploaded for security purposes. So I'm not sure I have that data for you. But what I will touch on is our notaries are helping all types of transactions, and specifically in the real estate genre, I'm sure they are bringing those types of transactions to our platform. And then, just to touch on the fact that you were talking about notaries creating their own, we'll call it a side hustle, for instance. One of the things that we do at Notary Hub is we offer each notary their own storefront. So when they join our platform, they essentially have their own website to market their remote online notary business. So they get to customize that with a photo of themselves, a bio about themselves, but more importantly, a scheduling mechanism where people can schedule directly with them and a place where they can upload their documents. So for instance, if you had a client that you needed to have something notarized, you could share that notary's QR code or link, and then your signer would go directly to that notary on our platform, and they could schedule directly with that notary and upload those documents directly with that notary.
That's awesome, because there's going to be, businesses or people that are just comfortable working with a particular notary, and they get to know them, they like them.
Right.
And it's a great job for people that kind of want to be able to make their own schedule. Maybe it is their full-time job, but at least they are in charge then of kind of creating their own business, and they can set their own hours, I would imagine. They can choose what jobs that they choose to take on and which ones they don't. I mean, it looked to me like, there was appointment times that range from like 5 in the morning until 11 at night.
Yeah, our platform covers it all, because all of those notaries can get those organic opportunities, which is what you did. You didn't know a notary on our platform. You came to Notary Hub. You said, I just need this notarized. So we have an algorithm that will send that out to all the notaries that have set their availability in their profiles as being open. Yeah. And then those same notaries can also take those appointments, or they can market their storefront with their QR code and that link. If they want to set up their own website, they can market themselves on social media, on email blasts, just like they would in any other business. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's amazing. I love entrepreneurs. It's like you see a problem and then figure out that solution. And it's so interesting you go back to COVID, because it really did change so many of our businesses. Yeah. I had never done a Zoom call with a client.
We saw the wild, wild west, Carese, because we had attorneys actually saying, I just did a Zoom call notary. And I said, whoa, don't do that. That's not legal. People didn't know what to do and what is remote online notary? What does that look like? How does that work? And so I'm so grateful that states have laws that keep this within, I like to call it like you can't throw a gutter ball.
Right.
When you're doing a remote online notary. And we've built our platform that way to protect the notaries and to protect the signers, to make sure that all the components of a notarization legally exist. So for instance, in an in-person notarization, a notary could forget a signature or forget their stamp, or even a signer could forget to sign something. Our platform won't let that document get locked, and it will pop up and say something's missing, and it will actually tell them what's missing.
So it's got that fail safe there.
So you can't throw a gutter ball, Carese.
That's
You'll
awesome.
always throw a strike
Yeah.
when you're working on our platform.
Well, and I can't tell you, like, over the years, how many times, like, we're ready to go to closing on a deal, and the court can't record it because somebody, and it was missed along the way by the escrow company. It was missed by the notary.
Right.
There's something missing. So it gets kicked back.
Right.
So that's incredible that you have that fail safe there to ensure.
It's really helpful. And we also provide, another tool to our notaries where they actually have a talk track that they're looking at, which helps them cover all the required components to make sure that the notarization is legal. So again, another tool in remote online notary that probably doesn't typically exist in an in-person traditional notarization.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. But yeah, I would love to kind of go back to your background because you open your company. So it's pretty interesting that it's really, you take notarization to international. And what are some of the destinations that you're aware of that some of your notaries have helped people in?
Yeah, we hear of solutions where signers are either living or traveling abroad, whether it's work or it can be anything. And there's a transaction that's happening in the US, and they've worked with remote online notaries in our country at whatever time it is in our country. And it's whatever time it is if they're in, Indonesia or Middle East or somewhere in Europe. And they're transacting and doing a notarization while our remote online notary is in, New York or Texas or Florida or Washington State, and allowing that transaction to continue by completing a legal remote online notary, with a downloadable PDF. Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, that's incredible. It really does have applications for so many industries. But I just keep thinking about lending because that's what I do. Yeah. And, so many times people are traveling. People travel a lot. They'll go on vacation, and it's, within our team, we kind of have a joke. We're like, what'll happen is they're going to go into contract and then they're going to leave the country on vacation. That's because that's always what happens, right?
Like, yeah. And now they can. Good.
Now they can.
Go.
Right. So, and like I said, I had the client of mine in India, but we're finding more and more loan programs that are picking up steam where the investors are allowing the remote online notary for the buyers. And I truly can't wait until we see it pick up even more, because I think it's going to in time.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in it so much as far as the security features that are in place.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what would be a stop for requiring a wet signature on paper. I'm baffled by it still, but I'm sure there are some reasons. Yeah. I understand, but it's moving this direction.
It totally is. And when you explain about the security piece of it, that I did not even realize
the encryption and locking the audit trail in the PDF, and then the audio visual recording. Yeah. Like you have both of those.
Of every single transaction.
That's
which
right.
I would imagine would give investors, like for mortgage and in the legal world.
That's right.
Even more. That gives him even more ammunition.
We're ready.
We're ready. Yeah.
We're ready.
Well, and you've been an entrepreneur for years and years and have kind of evolved in your company. How many people do you have on your team that you work with that have rolled this out and that you've developed this with?
I love the question, because we are thinking about notaries and making sure that they're onboarded in the most incredible platform that's easy for them to use. They have to jump through a lot of hoops to go through all the compliance steps. So we've really dovetailed that experience all the way, not just from the UI and UX of Notary Hub, but from our team. So our team loves our notaries and loves our signers. And so when they're interacting, whether it's on the phone, customer service experience, or a ticket or a chat, our Rons and our signers feel the love from our Notary Hub team. And I'm truly blessed to have the team members that I have. And I've personally known or have a connection with every person that works on our team. So they're family.
That's
And
awesome.
we're a family, and you feel that when you interact with everyone on our team. So it's our team that makes our company. And I'm blessed to have everybody that's working on our team.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, in my interaction, just when we were jumping on the call with your team member, yeah, it's and that it shows, and clearly through your leadership, and
Thank you.
you can tell that you love what you do and that you really care about your business and those notaries. What does it take? Like, what does it take to become a notary? Like, I've never honestly looked into it, but what does it take to become one?
Yeah. So every state creates
Mhm.
their own rules and licenses notaries within their state. So every border has a different requirement. In general, every notary has to be licensed.
Okay.
So, and I say that because some people may fraudulently grab a stamp and think that they're a notary. So it's a license, and it's a public license. So notaries are a notary public, not a notary private, believe it or not. And that's a distinction that I want to highlight, because sometimes notaries become notaries because their job requires it. My
Mhm.
boss told me I need to become a notary. In reality, that notary could be helping anyone in the general public, not just the use cases within their job. So to become a notary, you need that license. To get that license in Washington State, for example, every notary has to have a $10,000 surety bond.
Okay.
And in Washington State, generally, I have a company called LMI Notary Service.
Mhm.
We help those notaries in a one-stop shop go through that licensing process. So they can buy their bond for $50 from LMI Notary Service. It covers them for their 4-year term.
Okay.
And so that bond protects the public in case that notary was sued or did something unintentionally or intentionally, and that document came into question. That bond is there to protect the public. We also have an E&O policy, errors and omissions insurance, that, believe it or not, is not a requirement for notaries, but we believe every notary should purchase this. This is protection for the notary. So the bond does not protect the notary, but they're required to have it. The insurance does protect the notary, and they can get insurance anywhere from $15,000 up to $100,000 limits. And it's pretty inexpensive. It ranges anywhere from $50 to $140 for the 4-year term for the notary. So pennies to sleep at night to know that they're covered. They have to have a physical notary stamp. We even sell those embosser crimpers that crimp the
Yes.
paper, just like the old days,
Yeah.
and a notary journal to log their transactions.
Mhm.
And that's another thing we didn't hit on for Notary Hub, is there's an electronic journal that automatically populates, instead of the traditional sense where the notary has to log everything physically in their journal. So those are the essential requirements to become a traditional notary. Believe it or not, there's no required training. They're attesting that they understand the laws of the state of Washington. So because we know there's so much entailed in a notarization, I also own an educational company
Mhm.
where I've partnered with a lawyer, an attorney at law, to talk about notary law. So he and I work in that company to educate our notaries so that they're not just licensed with the minimum requirements, but they actually understand what they're doing and understand what they shouldn't be doing at the same time.
Well, that's excellent, because if somebody is coming to you and saying, hey, you know what, I would like to build a career, build a business as a notary, you're taking them through that education process.
That's right. Or adding value to their current job.
Mhm.
They can go to their boss and say, I am a notary and I understand how to transact. I'm adding value to our company. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I had no idea. And I have to imagine too, like with the title companies, they're going to love that extra layer of the E&O insurance.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for taking me through that.
Of course.
I was always curious, like what exactly, because I hold licenses as a mortgage loan originator. I hold federal as well as state, and we have to have bonds.
Yeah.
but and do continuing education, but I didn't know, like with notaries, what they have to go through. So that's excellent. Well, any prospective notary should come to you and talk to you about getting licensed and bonded and
Happy to
all
help.
the opportunities
Yeah,
that are
absolutely.
there.
Happy to help.
Very exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always been so impressed is this. You are an entrepreneur and you own your own companies, multiple companies, and yet you run marathons and you are, incredibly physically active, and you're very active in your family and with your kids and so forth. I mean, how do you do it all, Terry?
I think it's because of all of that is how I do it. So, yeah, I think I'm just passionate about everything I choose to do every day. So I'm blessed with 4 amazing young adult children. And I think part of how I'm able to run all these companies is I don't know any different. I know it's busy, and managing my time and choosing the things that drive me and the things that don't. And, obviously family first. But part of what continues to drive me is my activity. I love my running, not just racing in the competitive aspect, but it fuels me physically, but also my headspace. It allows me to have clear moments and insights when during the busyness of a day may not allow me to have those insights. I'm also a yogi. I love practicing yoga 3 to 4 times a week. That hour of my day unplugged it's energizing for me, and I try to not have insights there. I really try and be in the moment, but yeah, I do have some ideas, in the yoga room too. And it's those ideas that fuel me and give me that space to be an entrepreneur instead of just being in the moment of the daily grind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's excellent. I've always wondered, like, gosh, I don't know how you do it. Like, you're super busy. You're at so many cool events, businessmen, family, and you're right. Like I've met all of your kids. They're amazing, amazing young adults. I mean, it's so impressive.
That's the biggest compliment right there. Thank you.
They're very impressive.
Thank you.
So great job, Dad, as well as like businessmen. And you've obviously shown them that you're an incredible example to them for the hard work and the ethic. And well, what a joy to get to talk to you about. I love getting a chance to talk to you about your business. I've always been fascinated by self-employed business owners and entrepreneurship. And it's one of those things where we all need each other. We all have these different things we're really good at. And by being there, we can all help each other. But I love to talk to people about just different businesses they have. And then, especially when it's a business that can interact in my business, it's even more exciting. So
I love that 100%. And I'm honored to be here with you. And I hope that I've added value to your ability to be creative within your business and others that are watching and seeing this and hearing this. I'm hoping this has been an educational, great use case. And I'm honored to be a part of it. You're such a rock star in everything you do for your clients in your industry and sharing remote online notary today. Thank you for thinking of me. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming in and talking about it. And definitely this is going to be helpful to consumers and potential notaries out there. Like maybe notaries that don't realize,
this was out there.
Don't know about your business, and that it's a one-stop shop, and that you also provide great opportunities for them to grow their business and also the consumer piece. Because there are things that come up all the time where consumers will need to have a document notarized. I get those kind of questions a lot from clients that'll call me for something completely unrelated to a loan. And they'll say, where would I go to get this notarized? And of course I tell them Notary Hub, as long as what they're getting notarized allows for the remote online notary, which more and more is going to continue to be. But things come up where people need documents notarized, and they don't really know what to do. So
I love being a solution for that.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and I love being a solution to my clients. So it's great
Yeah.
that I have the chance to know people, incredible people like yourself, not only as personally, but
Thank
as
you.
well as professionally, where I can connect them too. So
Thank you.
thanks for sharing with our listeners
Thank you.
today.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thank you
So,
again.
yeah. Well, Terry, it's been incredible talking today. I really thank you for coming in and talking to me about your business and just the consumer application of it, as well as, potentially for notaries that are out there that can come to you as a one-stop shop and for their education, for their licensing, for business opportunities. I think it's our listeners are going to get a lot out of this. So thanks again. And as always, thank you for tuning in and listening. And please like, subscribe, and follow me.